At Bath Savings, you know us for our exceptional customer service. And that service extends to our secure online and mobile banking solutions, so you can feel comfortable accessing and managing your accounts wherever you are. And it's all backed by the same personalized customer service from neighbors right here in your community. To learn more about Bath Savings online and mobile banking solutions, visit bathsavings.com. Bath Savings, your neighbor, your bank.
Hager Enterprises, a paving and excavation contractor specializing in all sorts of site work, utility installations, and road construction since 1987.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of High School Hoops. I'm your host, Larry Seidlinger, and in the studio today we have MaineBasketballRankings.com's leader, the fearless numbers guy, Mr. Lucas McNally. Luke, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Benno, we're 2/3 of the way through this high school season.
It's so fast.
12 down, 6 to go before the tournament, before the real fun starts.
Yeah.
Have you any surprises?
Yeah, a bunch. We can take it right to Lincoln County. I think one of the big surprises is the Lincoln boys.
Absolutely.
You know, they lost everybody except for the Hunt twins, basically, from that rotation that made the run and the 2 seed, went to the regional final. And normally, what happens when you lose everybody is, I call it the Morse problem, which is not maybe nice to Morse, but my uncle won them some gold balls so they can deal, is you lose everybody. If you're down in the cellar, you have this group that comes through, 4 or 5 kids that are really good, you know, Gabe Hagar, Styles, everybody, and then they leave, and what happens to Morse, whenever they have a good group, is they go back down to 3 and 15 and 2 and 16, and so I just sort of assumed, well, that's what Lincoln's going to do, because they'd been down for so long, but they're making it work.
Well, take heed. It's 2 things in my estimation. First is a sign of good coaching. They build a program, sustainable,
Yep.
and all they have to do is a little bit further north to their friends up at Madomic Valley, who year after year
Yep.
is a tournament team in the top 5 in the conference, and they do it year after year, and they've been doing it for 50 years.
Yeah, but you can count on one hand the programs that do that.
That's right.
And everybody says, oh yeah, we're going to fix our youth program, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to be a Madomic or a Hamden or a Falmouth or whoever, but no one does it.
It's a lot of work.
It's hard, yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of staying power by the head coach, and it takes a lot of parental buying into the program.
And you know what I've noticed is there's always in those programs, there's someone who you don't know about who's doing it at the 3rd grade level. You know, so Marcus in Waldoboro, Marcus, whose name has escaped me.
Benham.
Yeah, Marcus Benner, thank you. He's sort of an unsung hero of that program because he's there on Saturday mornings teaching the 1st graders how to dribble.
Nearly 80 kids showed up the other night at Madomic's Pee Wee program.
Really?
And that was 3rd through 6th. That wasn't even 1st graders. That was just 3rd through 6th.
And you need that.
And I was just amazed. And I always am. Same thing happens in football. There's 75 or 80 kids come out.
Yeah.
My dark horse team this year has been the girls from Madomic Valley. They've done
Really?
way better than I anticipated. I mean, they held the number 1 spot for almost the whole season.
Yeah.
They've dropped back. Spruce has overtaken them, but it's still pretty close.
Yeah. I thought they'd be top 3 in that region. I actually think the surprise there is the Oceanside girls because they're higher than they've done better than I thought they would without Bailey Breen.
Well coached, good program.
They can shoot the lights out.
And they can shoot, and they can run the floor.
Yeah.
And they handle the basketball very well, and they run the floor
And
very
they just
quick.
wear you out.
Yeah, they don't have the dominant player that they had in Bailey Breen, but they certainly got more balance and certainly can get after it.
And Renee Ripley is, you know, as the kids say, she's a problem.
So we're coming up into this tournament time. We're 6 games out. Lincoln's only got a couple of really turning point worthy teams.
The Spruce game.
Spruce game obviously is one of them, and Madomic. And tonight, as we're filming this, folks, on Friday, Oceanside, and they gave Oceanside all they wanted over at Oceanside a few weeks ago.
Zeb Foster buzzer beater.
Yeah, And so that's gonna, I think that may hurt Lincoln a little bit. Where Madomic's got 4 out of the last 6 games are in the top 5 teams.
Yeah.
You know, they've got Oceanside, they've got Camden in there, as well as Lincoln Academy. I mean,
Yeah.
They got and Winslow tonight.
Yeah, and Winslow's worth a lot of points, but they should beat Winslow.
Yes.
The Winslow, did you see the Winslow-Lincoln game at Lincoln?
I did not see it in person, but I watched it on tape, and it was a little
weird.
It was a little bloody.
A lot bloody. It was a weird game because it was an officiating nightmare. And even on the LCTV feed, so Winslow's best player is Braden Rodrigue. He scores like 27-something points a game, and he got 2 fouls in the first minute. And that's never good.
No.
And even on the feed, the broadcasters, who were definitely a pro-Lincoln feed,
And they have been for 33
yeah,
years.
yeah, they're not pretending to be otherwise. They go, oh, well, that's not a good call. And you know if they're saying that, then it's a really bad call. And then so he can't play defense for the rest of the half, and they can't take him out because he's the offense. And so they're playing 4-on-5 defensively. Then he gets an elbow to the face. He's got blood pouring down his face.
Big gash under his cheek.
Yeah, and then he's just bleeding the whole game, in and out. And so it was a weird game. But all that to say, I think Madomic should handle them.
Yeah, I think they will too. On a little bit further south, will Madomic overtake York? If they can both run the table, will they overtake York? I think they will, but you're the numbers guy.
Yeah, okay, so on the site, MaineBasketballRankings.com, there's a feature called Tourney Odds, and what it basically does is it simulates the rest of the season like either 1,000 or 2,000 times. And it uses a random number generator, it's a whole thing, but it basically looks for different combinations because heel points are so strange.
Weird.
And it's not, and it's not just wins and losses, you got to get the heel points. And so it simulates the heel points, thousands of times. And I think as of this taping, Madomic's 82% to get the 1 seed. So they have the inside track, because right now they're neck and neck, but Madomic has one more game to play.
Madomic has a game in hand over,
Yeah.
But I looked at the standings for the rest of the year. York only plays a couple of teams with winning records in their last 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. And I think in those 20% of the simulations where Madomic doesn't get the 1 seed, I think a lot of those are the ones where they lose a game or 2. And it found scenarios where they lost as many as 4 games. Like that's the biggest outlier it could find.
Well, certainly
think
Lincoln Academy in Oceanside are worth a lot of points, but Camden's an A school.
Yep.
And they're in 4th.
Yeah, I think they have 7 wins right now.
They do.
Yeah.
According to Maine Basketball Rankings.com.
Well, what do they know?
So I really think Madomic's going to be in there, but whoever's in that one spot, they're going to have a tough road because they're going to wind up either playing Lincoln or probably Oceanside in a semifinal game.
But I think you'd rather have the 1 than be the 2 or the 3 and get Spruce. You have to beat Spruce and York.
And Spruce is pesky.
Yeah.
They're extremely well coached. They're extremely quick, although they're not really big.
They're not very big, but they're very fast. Yeah, and they're very pesky. That's a good word. I mean, you were at that game.
I was.
They could have won that game. If things turn different ways, that flop technical doesn't get called. That flop technical is a 7-point possession. You know, if you take that away, that's a much closer game.
Yeah.
And if Jace Bessie hits some shots.
Well, yeah, that's easier said than done because you got a 6'6" Gabe Nash in your face all night long, who's every bit as quick as you are as 6 foot.
Yeah.
He's shut down everybody he's played this year.
I've said this in numerous places. I think he's the best defensive player in the state.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then, but the thing that they can do, which is such a Swiss Army knife hack or cheat code, is they can put him on a big. They can put him on Zeb Foster, who's one of the quickest people you'll ever see in a Maine high school basketball court. They can put him on a Jace Bessie. They'll put him on Rodrigue tonight. Whoever their best player is, they can put Gabe Lash on him. He can minimize them at best. You know, they put him on Nolan Ames for Camden, who's a fantastic scorer. He can basically shut them down, and then you've still got other defenders to deal with the fringe people.
Yeah, Mason Wynn from Madomic does a very, very good job defensively.
Yeah.
We saw that, was it Spruce or Mount? I think it was Spruce, that Begonia there that came on.
Yeah.
And he had 13 in the first quarter, first 7 or 8 minutes there, and the next, Wynn is on him, and he didn't score but 2 points the rest of the night.
Yeah.
So that's a double-edged sword right there.
And
for
it
Madomic.
so helps them to have Rocco DePatsy there, because
He's the garbage man. He likes that three-point shot, but he has been the beneficiary of so many offensive rebounds that have come right to him.
Yep.
And he's had some great dishes from his teammates.
Yep.
And been in great position. And a testament to Rocco, great positioning.
Yeah, and he can also guard the other team's big, so Gabe can guard the other team's best player. Because if you don't have him and the other team's got a 6'5" guy, a 6'6" guy, then it's kind of rough. Because Colin is it Colin?
Colin.
I know it starts with a K.
Yeah,
I know that.
Colin Donlin.
Donlin. I get him confused. He's big, but he's rough. He's a little raw around the edges.
He's young.
He's learning. But you don't want to count on him to guard like a Bouchard for York.
No, I think probably size-wise, York is big. I mean, they got 4 guys 6'5" or better.
Yeah.
I don't think their 4 bigs, any of them are as good as DePatsy or Lash.
I would agree with that.
I just don't see
McDonald
that. McDonald
is
is
really
probably
good.
one of the best guards in the state, I think, hands down. But defense will beat offense every day of the week.
And a thing to watch for him is...
You don't think so? Ask Oceanside when they played Orono the last 2 years.
Yeah, definitely. The thing to watch for him in the tournament is he grifted. He's a sneaky player. He sort of grifted 4 or 5 foul calls that were pretty bad and won them that game. It cost Spruce the game. Spruce is pretty hot about that.
Yeah.
But he's that sort of player, that sort of crafty, he's going to stick his arm in the right place and he's going to somehow manage to step on your instep and do that sort of thing and buy some calls.
Oceanside, Lincoln, tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, as we're filming this, it's going to be past tense. But
we're going to look smart or dumb.
Yeah, we'll either look really dumb or really smart come Monday night when this is played. But I really like Lincoln's chances at home.
I know Lincoln likes their chances at home. Yeah, I do too. If they lost, the Oceanside gym's a really hard place to play. For one.
Well, it's like Lincoln Academy's not any piece of cake either.
Yeah, it's really small. But that's more of I think a home court advantage than some other places.
I would agree.
And then the inverse is also true for Lincoln Academy, and they almost won that game. From what people at Lincoln have told me, they sort of gave it away at a couple places, but you hear that a lot, we should have made this shot, we should have made that shot. But then you go talk to Oceanside, you go talk to Larry Reed, and he's going to say the same thing, that they also gave away his possessions.
I think the Spruce Mountain game that Lincoln played where EJ hit the one at the buzzer, I think that may have gave them some confidence that we can win these close games.
Yeah.
Because it takes a while to get over the hump, to know that you're not out with 30 seconds or 10 seconds left.
Yeah, and especially where they don't have Gabe Hagar anymore. They don't have a
legitimate scorer.
A legitimate, everybody in the building knows who's going to take the shot.
Ball,
yeah.
He's going to take the shot, yeah. Although I will say the Coffin boy has come along, and the twins, the Hunt boys, have really stepped up in the scoring department.
They have.
They've learned that they are now responsible for getting a dozen or 15 or 20 points a night.
And it's interesting to watch them because it's so obvious that they're twins, even if you just saw like silhouettes of them, because of how well they play together and how well they know where each other is at all times.
It reminds me on a smaller scale of a couple boys that came out of Oceanside last year that were twins.
Yep. That worked out pretty well.
Speaking of defensive efforts, Lash took on Carter Galley in both games last year and did a pretty nice job holding a 30-point scorer down to a 10 or a dozen. The problem is you had a twin brother that could put 25 on the board too, and that killed them both games.
Yeah, I think Carter, didn't he have like 2 points at halftime, the game at Madomic?
I think so.
Something like that?
Yeah, I think so. The Wiscasset girls has to be the story of the week last week.
It's definitely the story of the week. Front page in the paper.
Yeah. On the snooze.
Yeah.
In case you don't make it to the sports page.
Yeah.
Testament to Danny Wall and his girls over there. They've hung with it. And we're talking before the show here, Barack Obama was president the last time they won.
Yeah.
That's 2 presidents ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as of today, 3 presidents ago.
My second grader was a month old when they last won a basketball game, which is crazy.
But on the flip side, we now have, if everybody stays about where they are right now, we will have Wiscasset, Lincoln, Madomic, Oceanside, and Camden all tournament bound.
Yep.
And Booth Bay will probably get at least a preliminary game.
They might get a play-in. I haven't looked at them recently, but
they're down.
They're down, yeah. But I think
those
they're in the
those
mix
5
for
schools,
prelim.
5 out of the 6 schools in Midcoast Maine, which really I think says a lot for Midcoast basketball.
Well, I make the joke at the Expo. I made the joke the last 2 years at the semifinals is Midcoast Day at the Portland Expo, because you'd have 3 of the 4 semifinalists in boys and girls in B South were all Midcoast teams.
Yeah, the same thing's going to happen this year if it stays pretty much the same.
Yeah, there was, I think last year, 7 of the 8 semifinalists, boys and girls, were closer to Augusta than Portland.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
That's another whole sore spot we can talk about.
Why don't we could do this in Augusta?
We did it for years in Augusta, and now we have to get down to the Expo where there's no parking and no room, and it's not a bad venue to watch a game at.
Yep.
But you can't beat the Expo. It's like the old Bangor Auditorium. There wasn't a bad seat in the house.
Yeah. I went to the football championships in Portland, and they had food trucks, like 5 or 6 food trucks, like just outside the stadium fence. And I'm like, why don't we have these at the Expo?
Yeah.
This would be great. They had a poutine truck.
Yeah.
The smell was amazing.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get a few games to call down at the tournament this winter. So I haven't been to the Expo, I think, since I took, since in the early 90s, we were doing college basketball. And we did a Westbrook game down there with Castleton State. So
I think the Expo, I've been very publicly against the Expo. It's growing on me a little bit as an atmosphere. It's fantastic. Like the Orono Oceanside State game there was electric, and that was awesome. The parking's not good.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. I've learned some tricks since. The security is a little over the top as opposed to like the Civic Center where they just sort of like whatever walk in, and their food's terrible. The concessions are terrible, and there's no good Wi-Fi. But the atmosphere there is really fantastic.
It's because you're right on top of the court. It's very similar. The auditorium in Bangor was the same way. And even though Augusta, you're back a little bit. I don't know. Augusta has been around for 50 or 60 years, and 55 plus years, and it's had so many iconic championship games.
And you can get so many people in there.
You can.
And it just gets so loud in there.
Yeah, you can. And you can park. You don't have to pay for
There's
parking.
a Walmart across the street.
Yeah,
There's food options. They have really good food on that baseline.
Yeah.
Like some really nice
They
salads.
They do a nice job.
Chicken tenders, and then you go to the Expo. They're like, we got this like pizza from 3 days ago and some popcorn that we burned.
Yeah.
$17, please.
Let's go to the A division.
Okay.
Camden.
Yeah.
Both boys and girls in 4th place.
Yep.
Started off slow, a little rough. Camden boys, I think, highest score in Class A.
They lead Class A in scoring, and I think they only returned like 4 or 5 kids from last year's team. So early in the season, it was Nolan Ames and a bunch of guys who weren't used to playing varsity minutes. And that's, so as the season goes on, they've sort of gotten that figured out.
Kind of like what happened at Lincoln Academy. They've kind
it's
of
very similar.
Coaching. Coach Gabriel did
But
a good
Nolan
job.
Ames is awesome.
He's the real deal.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, he's the real deal. There's no question. I mean, just like the Lash boy, the real deal.
Yeah, he's a two-way player. He can score mostly at will when he doesn't have Gabe Lash guarding him. But he still did better offensively against Gabe Lash than anyone else I've seen this year. He had some really, the Oceanside game, he had a couple of just block shots. He can really play.
Will they move up any? I mean, in that Class A, I mean, you've got Meso is in there. Meso and Hamden are 1 and 2.
Yep.
Meso's lost 1. Hamden is unbeaten.
Meso, I think, has pretty much got the 1 seed locked up.
And then Brewer.
Yep.
Will they overtake Brewer? I don't think so.
I mean, they would have to win tonight because they're playing tonight, which is the game of the day. And I looked at this last night for the newsletter, but I wrote that at like 1 a.m.
So you're thinking Brewer Camden is the game of the day over Oceanside?
It is, yeah, it is. So on the website, I have a thing that I came up with called the Stacks Index, because Sean Stackhouse, do you know him?
I do.
Yeah, he emailed me one day, or he DM'd me. He's like, hey, I'm bored. What game should I go to? And I thought, well, that's interesting. And so I came up with a formula, and it's basically looking for a high-scoring, close game between 2 good teams. So like, if 1 and 2 in the state play an 80 to 79 game, something like that, versus a Class D girls game where it's 20 to 7. And you're just like, oh my goodness, why did I drive an hour for this? So, but that kicks out a number for every game, and then the highest number for the day is the game of the day. And so the Brewer Camden game is pretty high. It's like 89 out of 100.
Well, I don't
the
know.
Lincoln-
I don't know your formula, but
Lincoln
I would have to
Oceanside's
argue
just below it.
Lincoln Oceanside's going to be.
Lincoln Oceanside would have been 4 of the 5 days this week would have been the game of the day.
Okay.
It's one of
I'll
those
give you
things.
that. I'll give you that. On the girls' side, Camden girls playing well, then fourth.
Yep.
They're not going to overtake either Coney or Lawrence.
I don't think so, no.
You know,
I don't
Coney's
think
11-1,
anyone's
Lawrence 11-0.
Lawrence is so good.
Lawrence is really good.
Yeah.
That's going to be an interesting tournament.
Yeah. I think Lawrence will probably win that tournament, but
But they
I
might
thought that
overtake Hamden.
I thought that last year.
They could overtake
They
Hamden.
could get Hamden?
They got the same records.
Okay.
So they could overtake
I hadn't
those
looked
guys.
at that in a day or two, so
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it. Because you probably looked it up because you have notes, and I didn't take notes.
I do have notes.
Good.
If I've learned anything in this TV thing is to make some notes so you don't wind up with 5 minutes left of the show going, I got nothing else to say.
Yeah. Like, oh boy.
And the Wiscasset boys, we talked about them a little earlier in the
Yeah.
show. They're in 4th place, Class D. A Renaissance team. I mean, they've just come from nowhere in about 3 years' time.
They've been a real beneficiary of the relegation plan that the NBA put in, and I think they were the impetus of the relegation plan because for years they were just getting blown out,
It was
losing
painful.
by 80. There was the COVID year, not the COVID Cup year, but the COVID year where there was an open tournament and it was just a mad dash to try to get games in. Teams would schedule doubleheaders and they would play Wiscasset first, and then they would play somebody else, and they would treat the Wiscasset game as the JV game, and then they would still win by 50, and then their varsity would play the second game in the doubleheader. And so from them to come from that, they got relegated down by the MPA to Class D, thank goodness, and then they've really had some and then some motivation to build something because you've coached basketball. It's really hard to get kids to go play if you're getting torched.
When you're getting handed to you every night.
Yeah, like that's not fun for anybody.
That's going to be interesting, but I don't see anybody beating Valley in Class D.
I went to the Wiscasset.
What's the young fellow up there? They got 2 players in Valley that are both really, really good and could play on any team in the state.
Yeah, Fisher Tewksbury and Harry Lewis.
Harry Lewis is the
Harry Lewis is kind of we have Jameer Rose at home sort of situation, you know. He's sort of in that mold. It's sort of the JV version of Jameer Rose. And if you haven't seen Jameer Rose for Noble, he's just fantastic. But yeah, I saw them against Wiscasset. I went to that game, and they just punched Wiscasset in the face.
Yeah.
And Wiscasset was like, oh, these are the big boys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Valley up there, because they've got a rich tradition, similar to Madomic, similar to Jonesport Beal, similar to some of these schools that have just had year in, year out that are really, really good.
Yep.
And Harry Lewis is the real deal up there. I watched him last year in the tournament, and I was overly impressed. Was he a senior this year or a junior?
He's a junior.
Junior, that's what I thought.
He
played in 8th grade.
He played in 8th grade. He and Fisher Tewksbury both got to 1,000 points on the same game.
Yeah.
Which is crazy as sophomores.
And that happens sometimes. You know, Lincoln Academy back 30 years ago, McKinney and O'Brien, same night, same game, about 4 or 5 minutes apart.
Noble has 2,000-point scorers this year. I think they were like 2 or 3 games apart.
Galley boys were both 1,000 points.
Yep.
There was a little bit more
of a gap.
Between the gap. Okay, let's talk. We got a few minutes left before we wrap this up.
Okay.
They're talking about this never-ending struggle of reclassification.
Yeah.
Are we going five different divisions, or are we going to stay with 4?
Okay, so this is what
I know they've sent you something.
they've sent me. Something. So this is
They
crazy.
got tired of listening to you. Excuse me. They got tired of listening to you complain.
Well, what's crazy is, so 2 years ago when we did this last time, it was all this cloak and dagger stuff where I'm talking to assistant ADs, and I'm talking to coaches, and it's like the Rosetta Stone, and I'm trying to get the things, and I'm like, is this a real thing? Is this a actual plan? Is this the current plan? Is this not the current plan? This year, like in October, they just like called me. And like, hey, here's the plan. Here's 3 of the proposals we're looking at. What do you think? And I'm like, are these the real proposals? They're like, yeah, these are the real proposals. And I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. And I went into Maya's office, and I was like, you're not going to believe the email I just got from the MPA. So yeah, what I've been told is they almost have to stick with 5 classes because the 5th class, the revenue from that tournament is funding field hockey.
That's a poor reason to do it.
It is a poor reason to do it, but it also makes sense. And
so they're going to go a AA, B, C, and D.
And D will be 100 schools or fewer. which will help, I think, a lot with D, because you have a big issue like there was that Buckfield North Haven game. It was 115 to 17 or something, because Buckfield's got 150 kids and North Haven has 15.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big proponent of enrollment matters and winning, because
So is that
but
going
at that point it is. If you
will
have
it
15
change the Oceanside, Lincoln, Madomic from B to A?
kids, I think they're all going up to A. I haven't really looked at it since I reported it in December, and then the new one is pretty much the same thing. So I saw 3 proposals, and each proposal had Lincoln and Madomic going to a different tournament site. This is back in October. And I said, okay, here's my first note. Don't send Lincoln Academy especially, or Madomic, to Bangor.
No.
Because that drive is terrible. And it's not safe. If there's any snow, that 220 stretch, is just black ice everywhere. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason. And then I said, if I were you, I would do everything I could to keep Lincoln, Madomic, and Oceanside all in the same region.
Well, many years ago, back probably close to 30, they sent Madomic to Bangor for a 9 o'clock game that they won, and then they had to be back for like a 2 o'clock game the next Saturday. And the team they were playing was a Bangor team that played the 7 o'clock game, and they went home 5 miles away to go home.
Yeah.
And with the Lincoln kids, the Madomic kids came home on a bus. No sooner got home and got to bed and turned around and got up and had to go back to Bangor.
Yeah.
Not equitable.
No. I've been pushing, and I think there's some movement towards this. So you got the quarterfinals, and you got that group of 4 games, and you've got, so in A North, you've got the 9 o'clock game, I think is the last one. And I'm like, why, if you've got, let's say you've got Coney's playing Gardner, and it's at Augusta, and you've got Hamden playing Brewer. Why is the Hamden Brewer game automatically the 9 o'clock game? Why flip them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Flip them so like the teams that are traveling the furthest aren't in the last or first games, like the morning games, the late games. That's a safety thing.
Oh, it makes sense.
That's a make sure grandma can come to the game thing. You get
Here's
a bigger
problem.
crowd.
Here is the problem. I got this all figured out.
Okay.
It makes too much sense.
It makes too much sense. But I think there's the new regime. I think has some.
Well, I hope so.
Is hearing that.
I hope so.
And I think if you go to them and go, hey, if you have Spruce Mountain playing the 9 a.m. game in Portland, not many people are coming. But if they're in the 12 o'clock game, you're going to get a lot more people making the drive from J. Or maybe don't, if it's Oceanside, don't put Oceanside in the late Friday game and the first game Saturday morning, because then
it gets like the rest of the MPA confusing.
It gets confusing, and then the team playing in the morning game is not going to the night game, except for the half of them are going to go anyway.
Indeed. Well, Luke, we're running out of time. We want you to come back here before the tournament. We'll talk it all over again when we get down to that last week.
We'll have so much clarity.
We'll have a lot of clarity. We thank you for sitting in. Sure. Luke McNally from MaineBasketballRankings.com. Folks, it's tournament time coming up here in another 5 or 6 games, and we can't wait. So for all the guys here at LCTV, High School Hoops, we hope you enjoyed it. We certainly have enjoyed talking High School Hoops with Luke McNally, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
At Bath Savings, you know us for our exceptional customer service. And that service extends to our secure, online and mobile banking solutions. So you can feel comfortable accessing and managing your accounts wherever you are. And it's all backed by the same personalized customer service from neighbors right here in your community. To learn more about Bath Savings online and mobile banking solutions, visit bathsavings.com. Bath Savings, your neighbor, your bank.
Hager Enterprises, a paving and excavation contractor specializing in all sorts of site work, utility installations, and road construction since 1987.